Let's talk about building a disciplined imagination. Hey, I'm Father Mark Mary with the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal, and this is Ascension Presents. So much of the trouble we get into is a matter of focus. Like the roots or the opening, that which opens the door to so many of our struggles, is what we do with our focus, with our eyes or our spiritual eyes. Like, what are we looking at? And for example, it's like the sin of lust. Where does the sin of lust begin? We look at King David, right? It's like, it's just his eyes not being where they're supposed to be. And it can be so similar for judgment. It can be so similar for envy, for jealousy. What we'll talk about today is this sort of spiritual anxiety about our relationship with God in the future. That anxiety, I realize, like, not all anxiety, but this type of anxiety, right? It's the fruit of, again, just not looking where and being focused on where we're supposed to be focused. And so particularly with this idea of just getting anxious and concerned and fearful and even paralyzed about, like, what's God gonna do with us, particularly in the future. What's this yes going to mean down the road? These types of questions that I think many of us are familiar with. Like, the problem is, right, like, we're not supposed to be looking down there. We're not supposed to be looking down there. We're supposed to be focused on the here and now, which is where God is and where the grace is. And so to stay rooted in the here and the now, we need to develop a habit of having a disciplined imagination. And this disciplined imagination, it comes from Sunday, September 3rd's little reflection in the Magnificat, again by the Dominican friar, Father Perkin. And I think it's just a really beautiful concept, right? Like, what does Jesus say in the Gospels? Jesus says, like, don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about tomorrow. Like, today's got enough cares of itself. Don't worry about tomorrow. Why? Because you just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You're not going to be able to figure out. And, like, it's going to get you riled up, and it's going to get you stressed out, and it's going to get you fearful, and it's going to, again, it can paralyze you in the moment, in this now, because you're trying to understand something that you can't understand. You're already trying to carry something now, like, that you can't begin to carry, or to solve a problem that you don't even know what the problem is going to be. And the fruit of that is just stress and anxiety and these sort of things, right? But even more so, it's because the grace to live tomorrow, the grace to live in 3 years and in 5 years, you don't receive that grace today. You receive the grace that day. And so we're trying to do these sort of things without the actual strength and the wisdom, the faith, hope, and the charity, the life of God in us to do them. And that ends up being a futile practice. The grace we need is in the here and now, and the grace that is given is our daily bread. It's the grace to live today. So how do I stay in the present? How do I stay here and now? How do I stay with God here? I realize, like, it's difficult. You know what? Waking up is difficult. Eating healthy is difficult. Kind of being on time and interpersonal relationships and these sorts of things are difficult, but like, where there's difficulty, like, we can have discipline. We can have discipline in waking up, right? We can have discipline in our study. We can have discipline in our diet. We can have discipline in our relationships and things like that. But often, right, like, we get, like we've talked about before, like, discipline, the will, like, it's a muscle. And so it has to be worked and it has to be strengthened. And so don't get discouraged if right now, like, you don't have a lot of discipline. Like, if you work at it and if you practice, that discipline will develop, the will strengthen, the habit will be formed. And so similarly, kind of in this more sort of, like, abstract, like, not, like, less tangible realm, in the area of the imagination, like, we can have a disciplined imagination. And a disciplined imagination is the one that, when sort of the snowball starts to roll and we're starting to go chasing, these thoughts down, like, a 3-year, a 5-year, a 10-year timeline, like, the disciplined imagination says, whoa, let's bring it back in. Let's bring it back in. Like, what's the Lord doing here and now? No, that's not, like, okay, that's not helpful. That's not going anywhere. That's not going to bear fruit. Like, it's going to raise questions I can't answer. I'm going to trust that to the Lord, and I'm going to come on back. Like, that is what a disciplined imagination does. And we need this disciplined imagination with purity. We need this disciplined imagination when we're tempted towards discouragement or distraction or envy or or lust as well. But here, right here with like the future, like let's stay rooted and let's stay present, and let's develop this habit of having a disciplined imagination, and let's give ourselves time. Let's give ourselves time. Again, it might not come easily to you, it might not come natural, it might not be something that you've practiced, but let's begin practicing now. Let's begin strengthening the muscle now, and let's begin experiencing the fruit now. Like the fruit of a disciplined imagination in which we stay rooted in the present moment with the Lord is peace, is confidence, is hope, is truth, is strength, is wisdom. Like all of these gifts and fruits of the Lord's presence and His work in our lives. So I hope that's helpful. I think it's just a really great insight and a really great sort of like way of understanding like what we're doing. This idea of again, just this disciplined imagination and staying focused on the right things. Thanks to all my Dominican brothers out there for continuing to teach me. Remember, we are pilgrims on this earth. Somos peregrinos, little by little. Poco a poco, vamos a llegar. We're going to make it. All right, see everybody.